Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Another exciting show, another exciting guest. Today we're going to talk about a woman's journey into rediscovering. And let me go a little bit deeper before we start this show. Rediscovering. We all deal with that every single day of our lives. Sometimes we don't even realize it. Sometimes signals pop and we still don't recognize it because the universe has a way of making sure that you get what you want. And when you're doing something you shouldn't be doing or going through pain or whatever, it's going to bring you back. But you still got to put in the work. But you also got to recognize the signs as well. So today's show is about that reconnecting to self. Even though these signs were there, she didn't really pay attention to them until a little bit later. But then once she did, she started to see the beast mindset change. And today she wants to share her story on the change and hoping that her story would not touch everybody. Because let's get real, we can't touch everybody, but we can touch one person. I'd like to welcome to the show all the way from Colorado, Miss Aubery Cook to the show. What's up, Aubrey?
Hi. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for taking time out of your busy morning to come and share such a beautiful story. Before we get started, tell the viewers a little bit about Miss Cook.
Well, I am native, born and raised in Colorado. About 9 years ago, I decided to start a new career, and that's in real estate. I have been blessed. It has been a very fruitful season for me, and I continue to grow that. And about 6 months ago, I decided to get into life coaching and NLP.
What were you doing before the real estate?
I actually was an accountant for about 3 years. I also kind of managed an office. And I also taught at a school district for about 7 years with some kiddos.
Okay, so before we get into the life coaching, because we're gonna elaborate on that too, because let's get real. Everybody's a coach, and I respect that. But we're gonna understand what you bring to the table as a coach and what makes you different than the others, and why your message is so important than the other messages. But let's go back. You talked about a spiritual connection that was lost and was regained. What led you to the disconnect of the spiritual or your religious standpoint? Like, what was you doing that led you off of that path?
Oh, goodness. I would say conforming to the world. You alter who you are by judgment. You react the way that you think people that want to react. I was conforming to everything else around me versus me being my authentic self. And it was a huge internal battle.
Give me an example when you say conforming to the externals or the way people was perceiving you or how you wanted to perceive you. Go a little bit deeper than that.
Sure. So a lot of my friends and my family would probably describe me as somebody that is very blunt and very bold and take no crap kind of person. And although that is true, there's also this very soft, loving, compassionate side of me. And that part was not noticed. So the more that people were like, oh, this is who she is, it almost made me feel internally like I was like this bully or something. And that's not who I was. And if I didn't do something that they felt, I should be reacting then it was just judged really harshly. Like, Aubrey, you actually should be doing this. An example, I had a couple of friends that would give me advice in my relationships. And instead of asking me questions or caring about the way that I was feeling, they were almost telling me how I should be reacting or what I should be doing. And it was my journey.
Give me an example. Like, you're in a relationship. That's interesting, because you always wonder what girls talk about.
Oh, sure.
So give me an example of what they thought you should be doing instead of them listening to your pain.
Yeah, asking questions. Why do you feel that way, or what is happening that puts you in this place?
Yeah.
To not feel good. So here's the thing: is that everything in life is a relationship. Whether that be with your family, whether that be with your friends, whether that be an intimate relationship. Mm-hmm. And inside that relationship, for it to be fruitful, for it to elevate you and take you to another level, they have to meet you in that space. Mm-hmm. And that space is your authentic self. And when people are hurt and they bring their traumas from their past relationships or their past friendships or whatever that might be, they bleed it into the relationship. So they're not meeting you there. They're almost expecting you to react or to just conform to their trauma. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work like that. Mm. And I think that's where people get mixed up in relationships. You're not helping each other heal from your traumas. You're almost adding more to the bucket of traumas.
What were you dealing with in your relationships, though, that they felt you wasn't acting right, or that you should have did this? What were you dealing with? And you don't have to go through all the relationships, but just give me an example of something that you was really dealing with that probably dealt with what you're talking about. Maybe he had trauma that he didn't recognize, and crazy friends, and naturally you're recognizing you had the same issues.
Sure. So in my relationships and quite a bit of my past ones, toxic. If it was geared around anger, not being able to talk through those feelings or understand why that person was angry, if somebody drank a lot, or if somebody, gosh, I want to be able to explain this to where it makes the most sense here. I was just in a position to where I was really pouring my heart out. I was really trying to be compassionate and caring and being there for a person. And the more compassion and caring that I was putting out, it was almost being taken for granted. And in return, it was starting to really hurt me. And there was things that were being said, I'm not good enough, or you should be here and doing this for me. And it was always me, while I kept pouring into that relationship, whether it be my intimate relationship or my friendships. I just kept pouring into them, and it was depleting who I was, because in the midst of it, I was being put down. I was told I wasn't good enough, or I was told that my friends didn't like me, or my family didn't like me, or
this was your mate that was telling you this?
I had a mate and friends tell me stuff like that. It was very hard. It was very hard to navigate. I had friends that would say, Aubrey, you're making a mistake. Why are you doing this?
Why were you doing it? I can understand you really didn't know what you was dealing with, because you haven't, I'm just guessing, you didn't get a chance to self-diagnose your own self first. So this is maybe what you might consider.
Well, that's the beauty of all of it, if I'm being honest with you, is that even though that it was very traumatic,
Right.
Even though that it caused a lot of nights in my tears and silence, journaling, praying, begging for answers. It led me back to myself and to trust myself. And as I was learning more about myself, I was also able to forgive and still love that person, because people react and do things with intention. It's not that they want to hurt you. It's not that they want to put you in that position. It's just that their hurts are bleeding out through actions and words.
Right.
And you have to be able to step back and see that. And that's why I say meeting somebody in that space means so much, because you're able to help them and understand why they might be reacting or saying the things that they're saying.
Yeah, but should you take on, you're now a coach, should you take on that responsibility? Like, I got to get real.
Absolutely not.
I don't want to.
I don't think you should take on the responsibility, but do I think that you should offer forgiveness?
Right.
Absolutely. Do I think that you should love them through that? Absolutely. Because when you abandon somebody, or when you deflect or go back to treating them the same way that they treated you, all you're doing is hurting them even more. Right. And all they're going to do is continue to hurt other people.
Let's go back to
There's no healing in that.
Everybody goes through a different part of trauma in their lives. Some people say, it's so funny. I hear people say, I never had trauma. And I'd be like, that's bullshit. You had it, you just don't recognize what it is. Or it surfaced and you still didn't take heed to it. What type of traumas was you dealing with that you had to address your own self?
It was a lot of mental and emotional traumas. And I stopped believing in myself. I did. I really stopped believing in myself. I was waking up and it was always doom and gloom. There was nothing that I was looking forward to.
Really?
I mean, I was in a place. Go ahead.
I said, really? Were there moments of suicidal thoughts, or, you waking up with only two choices? You usually
it was pretty rough at one time.
Really?
And that is probably the key thing, is that, yes, there were dark days for me, very dark days. I was, I look back now with gratitude, that I was able to get myself out of it. Mm-hmm. But there was a moment in my life where I was listening to music that was not good. I mean, it was music of wanting to end your life and just wanting to give up. And it was bad. And I was even sending this to my family and friends.
Wait a minute. What was the music and who sent you the music?
Oh gosh, it was just ones that I would come across on TikTok, or that I would just randomly hear. And it was just like, I was so sad and low at that point in my life that I was just latching onto this music, because I was like, finally something understands what I'm feeling right now. And it was awful. And even going through that, there wasn't a person in my life that was like, Aubrey, are you okay?
Ain't that crazy?
I still had.
Yeah. Ain't that crazy that you go through stuff, and let's say, for instance, you got 25 girlfriends. I saw your social media. You got a decent little group of people that you follow it. But it is funny, because even in my own personal life, I tell people I can count my friends on one hand, and those are the friends that ask me every single day, how you doing?
Yep.
And they call multiple times, how you doing? That means two things to me. It means they're invested in me.
100%.
And when they're invested in me, I'm 100% invested in them. And it's crazy, but you've hung around these people that couldn't take 5 minutes of their time.
Well, I should actually backtrack. I have, just like you, a handful of friends that really did understand that I was going through. But the ones that I thought would be there, the ones that I expected to be there, the ones that I anticipated to understand me, didn't.
What did you do?
They actually were the ones that were hurting me the most.
What did you do? Did you castrate them?
No, even though that, like, in your mind, you really want to think that, but no. at the end of the day, it just kind of came down to one of those things where it was like, we have to part ways. It wasn't serving me. It wasn't doing me any good. And at first it was hard. It was destructive. It made me sad, because you love and care about these people. You want them to be a part of your life. But at some point you have to just accept, listen, it was for a season. And, like when I coach other people, I'm like, listen, people, place, things, anything that's around you, it's all tools. Right. It's tools to either help you grow or it's tools to help you learn something.
Right.
And that was just a season of my life that I had to learn something.
It is so funny because that's really hard for people to grasp that concept, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be loved and everybody wants to have the abundance of friends. That's why we have social media. Sure. That's why we have the likes, the value that, let me thank you for the download. Let's put it like this. We have devalued who we are as human beings and
100%.
replace that with likes, follows, and how many people are looking at my social media profile.
Yep.
And that's
we lie to ourselves.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I know people that can't even sit in the house alone and do
There's
something.
A lot that can't.
And watch a movie. They have to be around people. They have to be validated by people. When did you start? How did it make you feel to take validation of yourself and started to put people who was important to you in the right categories?
It was hard. Like, that was probably one of the biggest struggles that I had, was just having to understand and recognize that. But the more that I was journaling, the more that I was praying, the more that I was sitting in my silence, the more that I was starting to really, really understand, okay, this person taught me this. Great. Now I could use this in the next step in my life. But it takes a while. You have to own who you are. You have to own where you lied to yourself. And that is the hardest, is admitting that you are being somebody that you are not. And the more that you become who you are, and let's just give a quick example, right? And it's as simple as this. You could be in a car with your wife and you're like, honey, where do you want to eat? Right? And you go through I don't know, where do you want to eat, But in the back of your mind, you're like, I want to work out. I want to be healthy. I want to do all this. And you still say, I don't care. But when you really do care, but a lot of people pass off just the littlest of things like that and not give it any value. Well, then you go somewhere that you really didn't want to eat it because it's not healthy food. After you eat it, you don't feel well. Then you're down on yourself because you didn't follow through with a commitment. And it's little things like that. And that's where the weight starts to carry down on you. Little things. And then the bigger things that happen with your relationships, with friends, family, personal relationships, that's when it really starts to crash down. But it starts with the little things that you do that you lie to yourself about.
It's funny, but I'm going to ask you this question. Whose responsibility is it?
Mine. It is 100% mine. And that's what I like to teach, is that you are 100% your own problem.
Because you can get...
Like, you can't rely on somebody else to fix it. You can't lean on somebody else to magically do it. You have to put in the work.
It's funny when people get into these, like you said, these relationships and they become toxic. They usually show signs. Like, if I see somebody, I was talking to somebody and they went through my phone. That was a red flag for me. Not that I have anything to hide, but it's like, why did you go through my phone? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So those are people show you their insecurities. So when I asked, why did you go through the phone? And it was like, well, because blah, blah. So now they start to do what you said. They start to become open as to why they did. They can't justify it, but they justified it by saying that was a trouble for them. You know, then they start to pick pieces to justify their reasons. But to ask you this question, because you're a coach, how would you deal with something like that? Because I believe that it's not my job to fix the damage that you bring to a table. It's my job to either decide whether I want to deal with it. Am I strong enough to deal with it? Are you going to change? And 9 times out of 10, you're not going to change because you don't recognize that you did something that was truly, what's the word we want to use here? Unhealthy.
Right. Ask questions.
What's your take on that?
In a situation like that, I would ask the person, like, what happened? What thought went through your mind in that moment for you to pick up my phone and go through it? What were you expecting to see? What were you hoping to see? What were you wanting to find? And it all starts with questions. And as they answer those questions, it's almost like you help them solve, like, I really didn't have a reason. Well, where'd that insecurity come from?
Right.
Was it a past conversation that you had that you shouldn't have had? Was it a past relationship? And if it was a past relationship that kind of put you in that place where you have those insecurities, as an intimate partner, you should say, listen, I want to help you get through these. I'm not here to make you jealous. I'm not here to lie to you. If you're ever in a position where you just feel uneasy for whatever reason, can we sit down and talk about it? It all starts with a conversation, but you have to be vulnerable and you have to be willing to go into that space and you have to be honest with it, even if it makes you sound crazy or if it makes you sound weak, because it's not.
Yeah.
We all have those insecurities. We all have those crazy, creeping thoughts, and to me, that's where I think the devil's trying to, mess up your path. But you've got to be able to talk through it just like you do with God.
But I think a lot of people don't recognize that they have these issues because it's part of their norm. I mean, you can't, if somebody brings you something that you done, like you said, is crazy, most people will be like, I'm not crazy. Or that's not me. And they continue to go on. But you're a life coach now, which we're going to get into in a minute. Is it my responsibility to cure the damage?
No. But it's your responsibility to let them know that this is a boundary.
I like the way
it's
you
your
said
responsibility to say, this doesn't make me feel good. It is your responsibility to tell them that you're invading a space that is giving you an internal feeling that doesn't make you feel good. Because if you think about it, when that person goes through your phone, yes, you're mad at them, but on the super internal side of you, it's just like, man, they don't see me as a trustworthy person, and then you start to question your own worth, your own value.
That's crazy. Like you're a good coach. I like the way you analyze that. Let's go back a little bit. When you basically start dropping the pieces of your life, the ones that you thought would be there and so forth, how did they react? I always wonder how they reacted. Because most people be like, oh, well, she didn't want to have nothing to do with it. See, they switch it like really quick and make it sound like that you was the reason and that, oh, well, you was crazy, blah, 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 blah. What was kind of sort of the feedback that you was getting from the people that you wasn't disassociating yourself with anymore?
Oh, gosh. At first, you sit there and you let your own mind kind of go through what are they thinking? What are they doing? What are they saying about me?
Yeah.
At some point, you have to let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go. It's kind of like Mel Robbins. I absolutely love her stuff, and she does the whole let them theory, right? But you have to let go because their thoughts, their feelings, their reactions is not it's not my problem. It's their problem. And I just have to be able to accept it because I already know what they think. I already know what they might feel, or even what they might say is going to change the growth that I've already done inside of myself. And I'm just not willing to allow that space to get clouded anymore. And, that's not to say in the future that that relationship can't change. But for right now, it's one of those things that they kind of have to go on their journey because people know when they're doing wrong. That's a fact. When people are dishonest they know. They know. So if they're sitting there talking about it and trying to be like, oh, nope, they actually did that, I always say, go inward. What did you actually do? What was your part to play in it?
Right. Let's go back a little bit. How long were you on hiatus from your spiritual journey? Because you went into a whole different part of your life to where, I guess I'm understanding the story, right? Validation. There was a lot of things that was important to you. You even from going into the dark side and coming out. How long was this journey for you?
Oh gosh, I've been on this journey for, if I really look back, probably about 8 years. But there's been pieces inside that 8 years where things just got really good, to where you almost forget. And when I kind of came back into this journey on a deeper level, that's when I was like, this journey never ends. Like you have to stay so deep seated. So then you never steer away from it. And I think that is when the true growth begins. Because once you find your place here, you no longer allow the distractions of the outside world take you off track. And that's why I said it was probably in and out for like the last 8 years, is because there were things and I stopped focusing. I stopped praying. I stopped taking those moments to myself. And I believe more than anything is that you do need time by yourself. You do need time without your phone, without music, without TV, and just sit in your thoughts and let them freely flow in and out, because that's what navigates you.
Who was your support? Like who recognized that you were a ship destined or almost destined to sink? Who pulled you up? Who was your support cast?
God, 100%. Me and God.
What about your brother?
My brother and I are really close, but no, my parents and I are very close. They would check in on me. I have a few good girlfriends that would check in, and a couple of guy friends as well that were on the journey that would talk to me about this stuff. But I have to 100% give it to time alone in prayer with God. He is the one that redirected my thoughts.
What were 3 things that you shared with your higher power that really changed the narrative for you in your moment of silence?
Without going in great detail, I mean, there was a very dark evening, and that dark evening was just like, I'm done. But then there was just that quick moment, and it wasn't a sadness of what I was leaving behind. It wasn't a sadness of who would be sad. I was sad for myself because I gave up.
Hold that thought for a minute.
And in that brief moment, it was like, I'm not done with you yet.
Hold that thought. Let's go back. Don't leave me hanging like that. This is the Andre The Beast Crayton show. This is the moment of that beast mentality. Let's go back a minute. What was going through your mind that you was willing to check out?
Nothing was going right. Nothing was going right. The thoughts that were going, like, every time I try, this was going against me. There were thoughts of, it didn't matter how much I loved, I wasn't going to be loved back. It didn't matter if I poured my heart and my thoughts, everything into something. Nobody was going to hear me. It felt alone. I don't know how else to really explain it. It was just, it was alone. There was no answer. There was not a direction to say, Aubrey, you need to go in this direction. This is what's going to help you. There just wasn't any answers. And like I said, in that moment, I can't even explain the feeling, the little voice inside of my head that said, I'm not done with you yet. And I was sad for myself. It was almost like I missed myself in that moment.
When you decided to reply
just
to
change it all.
Yeah.
Change it all. In that moment, I promised myself, I said, Aubrey, you're going to get through this and your life is going to change and it is not going to look different. And that is a fact. My life has not looked the same that it did 2 years ago. And I made a promise to myself every day that I was going to wake up. I was going to be grateful for something.
What are you grateful for? That's kind of cool because people get up every day. Somebody asked me today, that's like, it was so funny. They said, what's your first thing you do when you get up in the morning? I said, I always tell myself
the first thing that I do every morning, I thank God. I thank God for another day. I thank God for the breath that I have in my lungs. I thank God for a day of opportunity.
I like the way
that is always my first thought in the morning.
What's your life like now?
Beautiful. It is great. I still have my days of struggle. Anybody that sits there and says, oh, my life is so great and I don't ever have any struggles. One, you're a liar. Mm-hmm. We all have struggles, but it is great. It is great because I finally wake up being grateful. I can look myself in the mirror and say, Aubrey, you have grown. You are going places. I am changing my own life and I am going to change other people's lives. I know this. And that's the beauty of all of it. And this is my personal spiritual belief, is that we are testimonies. We are testimonies to help other people grow in any part of their life.
You mentioned something before we wrap up. You mentioned something, and I believe that's true, that we go through something every single day. But I think once you learn how to deal with situations, it makes navigating that ship a lot better. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. I'll just give a quick example of how I feel about this. You could be sitting in traffic. Somebody could be blaring the horn at you. You could be running late, whatever the case may be, that you're in this traffic and you're literally wanting to have a meltdown and you're getting upset because you have somewhere to go and you have to be there at a certain time. When you could self-regulate your thoughts and your emotions, you could take that brief 5-10 minutes that you're stuck in traffic just to think that you have a car to drive. Think that you are able to go somewhere for an appointment or meet somebody. We forget to be grateful.
Is there a difference in the way men approach this ideal that you have versus women?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Do you find it different and with the way in which you look at life? Is it a different, because you're now a coach too, so do you find it different the way men look at life and problems and so forth versus women?
Yes and no. I feel like we're starting to move into, I guess maybe the correct word is like a community, that men are willing to be more vulnerable and to be more open about it, because when you're not vulnerable, that's when you block everything. And I think men are starting to kind of understand, I have to be vulnerable about how I think and feel, but then again, you still have some people that don't want to conform to it. They still want to kind of control the situation with their ego and pride. But
you're still you're young, 30 some years old. What would you like to see change in the world right now?
gosh, I would love to see people understand their true self. Because when you are your true self, you are going to bloom, and you're going to bloom in people's lives that you're supposed to be blooming in. You are going to naturally gravitate towards great things. But when you live in a world where you allow these insecurities, these self doubts, these lack of values, that's where you live. And that is what consumes you. That is what surrounds you. And that is what you almost invite into your life. But when you truly can just be okay and just know your true worth and where you want to go, and realize that you could do absolutely anything you want to do. Mm-hmm. The doors of opportunity are everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
You're life coaching right now. What are the 3 basic handicaps that people are suffering with right now that you actually went through yourself? What are the 3 basic things that you're dealing with?
Self-doubt, insecurities, lack of value.
What do you first tell them to do? Like how do you can give a whole person a thing of steak, mashed potatoes, a bottle of wine, and say, okay, do this. How do you get them on the right path? Like I call it baby steps.
Yep, baby steps. Baby steps. What do you want to do tomorrow? And whatever that may be, you write it on a sticky note. You put that sticky note on your mirror. And as you're getting ready, you are looking at that sticky note. You are reminding yourself what you want to do today. Is it something that you want to change? Is it a schedule that you want to stick to? Is it a weight loss? Whatever that challenge is between you and where you want to go. Mm-hmm. Write it down the day before. Stick it on a sticky note, put it on your mirror, and it just because you have to retrain your brain. And that's where it starts, is because we default to the comfort. Mm-hmm. Versus stepping into the uncomfortable. Well, the uncomfortable you have to have change.
But people don't want to put in the work. They want it overnight. What do you tell them?
Doesn't work that way. You can't plant a seed and expect a tree to be grown the next day. You have to water it. You have to care for it.
What do you think the statistics is? I know you got to know a little bit of people that get involved in these life coaches to try to change their life, but they don't want to put in the work. They drop out and they repeat this cycle over and over again. What do you think the percentage is of men and women?
Oh, goodness. It's changing more and more. I think women are more open to that change, for sure. I don't know what the percentage is, to be honest with you, but I think people are more open to that change. I think people are, for lack of better words, they're tired of their own shit. Mm. They're ready for something to change. But yes, you have to put in the work. It's not something that's going to happen in a couple of weeks, a couple of months. This is a journey that is years. And depending on how deep-seated those struggles are, is how long you're going to be on. And it's forever. Life is a journey. Life is a journey of change. Life is a journey of knowing something new opportunity. You just have to be willing to step into it.
Let's go back a little bit before we wrap up. You talk about life. This is a journey. We got to start recognizing, but let's get real. What about our teenagers? When should we start paying attention to what they're doing, and what's your advice on that?
Oh my gosh, we should start knowing what they're doing from the day they're born, if you want to know my honest answer. You learn things in the very early stages, even though that you don't think children do learn those things. They're sponges. They hear you. They know how to react. I mean, you have 5-year-olds sometimes able to navigate a phone better than, an adult.
Yeah.
They are sponges. I think that kids need this type of exposure at a very young age.
Okay, that sounds like a winner. How can the viewers reach out to you, support what you're doing, and know more about your life coaching skills?
They could go on my TikTok, they could go on my Facebook, they could text or call me directly. I am open to helping everybody. I don't have a closed book. I'm here to keep it open and just help.
What's your handles? You mentioned the TikTok stuff, but there's tons of TikTok. What's your handles on your social media so they can find you?
I actually don't have any really set up right now. I've been really blessed where people just text me. Some people just private DM me and say, "Hey, Aubrey, can you help me?" And that's where it started. So yeah.
So they can find you under Aubery Cook on social media, basically.
Yep, Aubrey Cook. I also have my realtor website that's on Google. I know that's not attached to my life coaching, but I do have that. But a lot of it is just through TikTok right now. And it is under Aubrey Cook.
What made you decide to do life coaching? Like, I'm trying to understand it. You're a successful realtor, but why the urge to do life coaching? And why should people come to you for expertise?
Because of everything that I've been through, I know for a fact there has been hundreds of people that have went through what I've went through. And I can meet them in that space and I can help them navigate, ask questions, get to know themselves a little bit more to have the life that they want, because it is 100% possible.
Aubrey, thank you so much for taking time out to share such an extraordinary story of that beast mindset, perseverance. I mean, you've done it. Congratulations. You guys make sure you follow her on all the social media platforms. Just search Aubery Cook, send her a DM or whatever, because all it takes is one click of a button on social media to change somebody's life. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton show.
Thank you so much.